Today we're looking at a monument we all think we know, the Great Sphinx of Giza. But what if the story we've been told is completely wrong? What if its real age could literally rewrite human history? Let's dig in.
I mean, you know this face, right? It's iconic. This colossal lion's body with a human head just staring east, watching the sunrise. For thousands of years, it's been the ultimate symbol of ancient Egypt, its power, its mystery.
And for over a century, the official story has been set in stone, so to speak. Every history book, every museum plaque, they all say the same thing. The Sphinx is about 4,500 years old, a masterpiece from Egypt's Old Kingdom.
But what if that's not the whole story? What if it's not even close? There's a really fascinating and, pretty controversial body of evidence that suggests the stone itself is telling a completely different tale. A tale that could push the start of civilization back by thousands of years.
Okay, so before we can get into the challenge, we need to be crystal clear on the official version, the one accepted by mainstream Egyptology.
The textbook version, right? It puts the Sphinx smack dab in the middle of Egypt's Fourth Dynasty. It's credited to the Pharaoh Khafre, who ruled around 2550 BCE, and it's seen as just one part of his huge pyramid complex. Everything lines up neatly with the other big monuments of the time.
So where does this idea even come from? Well, a lot of it hangs on this one piece of evidence, the dream stela. It's a stone slab that was placed between the Sphinx's paws. But get this, over 1,000 years after Khafre was even alive. There's a damaged line of text that mentions his name, and for many Egyptologists, that's the closest thing we have to a signature. For a long time, that was pretty much case closed. But should it have been?
Because the biggest challenge to the official story isn't written on some ancient tablet. It's literally carved into the limestone of the monument and the pit that it sits in. And this is where the geologists get involved.
And this is where it gets really compelling. The tombs that are right next to the Sphinx, tombs we know are from the Fourth Dynasty, show classic wind erosion, sharp horizontal cuts from thousands of years of sandblasting in the desert. But the body of the Sphinx and the walls of its enclosure, they look totally different. They've got these deep, rounded, vertical channels. Geologists look at that and say, that's a classic signature of water erosion from a ton of rain over a very long time. The problem? The last time the Giza Plateau had a climate like that, a so-called green Sahara, was thousands of years before the pharaohs even existed.
So to get a better look at all this weathering, geologists used a pretty cool technique called seismic refraction. You can basically think of it as an ultrasound for the bedrock. They use sound waves to measure how deep the damage goes below the surface.
And the results were kind of shocking. The weathering is up to twice as deep at the front and sides of the Sphinx as it is at the back. Now, what does that suggest? It suggests the front of the monument was carved out and exposed to the elements for thousands of years before the back was even finished. We're talking about a construction project separated by a huge amount of time.
Now, of course, to be fair, there is a counter-argument. Mainstream geologists suggest other things could be at play, like salt from groundwater seeping in and flaking off the stone, or maybe even some rare but intense flash floods. But the proponents of the older date, they come back and say that neither of those things really explains the distinct, deep, vertical channels you see on the enclosure walls. So the debate over the rock is still raging.
The riddle just keeps going when we look up from the body to that famously small head.
Think about it. The ancient Egyptians were absolute masters of proportion and symmetry. Their art followed this incredibly strict set of rules. So why on earth would they make such a glaring error on what was arguably their most magnificent statue? It doesn't add up.
Well, the alternative theory offers a really simple, kind of elegant solution. Maybe it's not a mistake at all. Maybe it's a renovation. The idea is that the original statue was a complete lion, with a properly sized lion head. But after thousands of years of getting rained on, that head was a wreck. So when Pharaoh Khafre came along, his sculptors had to carve away all that damaged rock to create a new face, which forced them to make it much, much smaller. This doesn't just explain the weird proportions, it also explains why the head is in so much better shape than the ancient water-worn body.
So the clues aren't just in the rock. They might also be written up in the sky. And this takes us into the super fascinating field of archaeoastronomy.
Okay, so you know how a spinning top kind of wobbles as it slows down? Well, the Earth does that too, just
really, really slowly. It's called precession, and over a 26,000-year cycle, this wobble means that the constellations we see in the night sky slowly drift. So the view of the stars from Giza was very different 12,000 years ago than it was in Khafre's time.
And here's where it gets absolutely mind-blowing. Researchers argue that around 10,500 BCE, the entire Giza Plateau was a perfect map of the heavens. On the spring equinox, the Sphinx, as a lion, would have stared directly at its own constellation, Leo, as it rose at dawn. At that exact same moment, the layout of the three Giza pyramids on the ground perfectly matched the alignment of the three stars in Orion's belt up in the sky. I mean, is that a mind-bending coincidence? Or was this a master plan, set in stone?
Okay, this all leads to what was, for decades, the most powerful counter-argument. Even if the geology lines up, even if the stars align, who on Earth could have built a monument like the Sphinx in 10,500 BCE?
For decades, this was the checkmate. This was the ace up the sleeve for the mainstream view. The argument was, look, history tells us that in 10,000 BCE, humans were just simple hunter-gatherers. They weren't capable of this kind of organization or technology. There was simply no evidence. Until, suddenly, there was.
The discovery of a site in Turkey called Göbekli Tepe changed everything. It's been definitively dated to 9600 BCE, and it is a massive complex of 20-ton, intricately carved stone pillars, built by people who are supposedly just hunter-gatherers. It proved without a doubt that a sophisticated culture capable of huge stone construction projects existed right around the time the alternative Sphinx theory says it should have. It was a complete game changer.
So in the end, we're left with this incredible scientific standoff. On one side, you have archaeology saying, hey, a monument has to belong to the culture of the artifacts you find all around it. But on the other side, you have geology saying, yeah, but the physical evidence of the rock itself is telling a much, much older story.
So the riddle remains. You've got established history pitted against the story being told by the stone, by the water, and by the stars. Is the Sphinx a 4,500-year-old monument that just happened to weather in a really strange way, or is it a 12,000-year-old survivor from a lost chapter of human history, a message from a world we've completely forgotten?
And that really is the question that continues to echo from the Giza Plateau. It forces us to wonder not just about the age of a statue, but about the true age of civilization itself, and about what other incredible secrets our most ancient ancestors may have left behind for us to find.